This is the CCW Digital Speaker Spotlight Series. As always, I'm Brian Cantor, Principal Analyst for CCW Digital, and your host for today's discussion. Now, we all know the importance of a mission statement and really defining your business values. It's frankly something you learn on the very first day of your very first business course. And it's something that you see time and time again as you progress throughout the marketplace, move from company to company, move from career to career. That idea of a mission is always the constant there. But as we start to really understand and value this idea of customer centricity, it's time to rethink how we evaluate these mission statements. It can't just be about the commercial goals for our organization or the vision of the product we're trying to create. We really need to consider who we want to be when engaging with our customers, because that in turn is going to tell us who we need to be from an organizational standpoint. It's going to tell us who we need to be hiring, how we need to be managing, what operation we simply need to be running. And so startup and growth organizations are particularly fixated on this, right? Because they have the power to truly define who they are in the market. Granted, that also means that they have the challenge of preserving that identity as they go through the challenges of extreme growth and big operational shifts and redefining their product lines. They still have to identify whether their initial brand vision, their initial vision for the customer experience is going to stay constant as they evolve. So how do you navigate this reality? How do you deal with these challenges? Well, Meredith Molloy of Purple Carrot is going to be answering this question and more when she speaks at CCW Austin this September. And she's here with us today to preview that session and share some of our insights. So Meredith, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
Great. So real thrilled to have you coming to the event. And like I said, that unique perspective of coming from an organization that on the one hand has so much power to define who they are, but on the other hand has so much uncertainty ahead as you grow and deal with new challenges. It's really great to see how you kind of balance those two areas and make sure you're creating the best experience possible while also growing your business. So really thrilled to get a lot of your insights out there.
Absolutely. The startup world is definitely a unique one that can be a bit chaotic. And so building a customer experience and a customer experience strategy is definitely a unique task in such an environment.
So since you are thinking about defining your brand, I want to kind of start off by asking you about you and Purple Carrot. I mean, what is the mission right now, both for the overall company as well as specifically for the way you're engaging with customers? And then what does your specific role entail?
Absolutely. So Purple Carrot, for those that may not know, we are the first and only 100% plant-based meal kit service. And so we provide weekly meal kit subscriptions with 3 plant-based dinners, as well as the opportunity to add on extra meals such as breakfasts and lunches. And for us, mission-wise, as a company, we really work toward helping people discover how really delicious and healthy and simple it can be to incorporate more plants into one's diet, more plant-based meals into one's life, and some of the benefits for one's health, for the environment that come along with that. With that, my team of customer advocates, they receive a lot of questions about our ingredients and dietary needs, if our product, really fits their lives and their needs. And with that, as we all know, dinner time and meals in general, it's a really personal time of day and part of your life, or for people just as humans as well. And so with that in mind, as I've been structuring and developing the overall customer experience and customer support strategy at Purple Carrot, I've set the customer experience mission or mantra, sort of what we want our lasting impression to be that with every customer that we connect with, leaves our conversation, whether it be a phone call, a live chat, an email, but they leave that interaction feeling as though we are knowledgeable, we're empathetic, and also that we move with a sense of urgency and that we help them out in an immediate fashion. Since, as we know, as consumers ourselves, immediacy is becoming everything in the world of customer support. Within my role specifically, I came on board to Purple Carrot about a little over a year and a half ago now. And it was the customer support team, the customer experience team, very foundational. And so I really first focused on operationalizing the customer advocate team really from the ground up, and provide some definition to what success within the role and success within the department looks like, both quantitatively and qualitatively, whether that be through setting, benchmark KPIs for the department and for individual associates, and really focusing on verbatim customer feedback that was coming in. With that, probably within the first, I would say, 8-ish months of my time at Purple Carrot, really started to come a transformation within the customer experience department and the team that I drove, where I scaled the team in headcount, built out a really strong remote presence to be available for customers that are not just East Coast based, and to also have the team be multi-tiered. So it wasn't just me leading the team with about 15 customer advocate direct reports, but building out where I brought a couple of supervisors on board as well to tier out the team overall. Also, once that happened, I was able to start to really move my role to be more strategic, where a lot of the supervisors, they handle the day-to-day workload and supervision of the customer advocates. And so for me, I was able to craft an overarching customer experience strategy for 2019 and really start to drive at a higher level cross-functional change within some customer touchpoint road mapping for specific customer segments like new customers or high-value customers, and really aiming to heighten the overall engagement with our brand. Right now, something I'm working on is that I'm rolling out a cross-functional survey-specific strategy for how we send out surveys to gather customer feedback, whether they be surveys that we send out on a regular cadence like NPS, or like surveys asking weekly for feedback on our recipes, or one-off ad hoc surveys where we're asking for very specific information and feedback from our customers about specific topics, and just making sure that we're asking the right customers at the right time for that feedback, and also, of course, to make sure that no single customer is receiving like 5 surveys in the span of 2 weeks, because no one wants that.
For sure. So at first it sounds like you have a lot on your plate, but it also sounds really exciting as you're getting to play such a role in really defining and executing that customer experience from the ground up. But I do want to dive into the mission you brought up, because from what I understood, you kind of had 3 different ways you're thinking about this. First of all, you have the plant-based component, which even as it becomes more mainstream and less of a niche approach, it is still a lifestyle, and it's something that you have to really be mindful of customers having a particular passion or sense of value that they associate with that lifestyle. Then you just have the broader concept that you brought up, the human component of meals, and so really thinking about how you're connecting with people in kind of a human and less transactional way. And then you also talked about the actual service experience, making sure that you're demonstrating knowledge, that your team is quick and being able to really solve problems and answer questions. And so you kind of set the gauntlet right there for the kinds of people you hire and then the way they actually perform in their roles. So I'm wondering if you have any insights about how you look to identify in potential agents, potential employees. Do they fit that message? And then once you get them in there, what can you do to keep developing them in the right direction?
Yeah, I think especially at a growing startup like Purple Carrot, and also for more established companies as well, I think being really successful at customer experience, it does require that blend of different skill sets where you need to be really organized and really able to multitask because there is a lot going on. But I think above all else, one thing that I've looked for really heavily, whether it be for a customer advocate or rep or a supervisor, is someone that is innately able to recognize the need to balance customer needs with business needs, since within a growing organization, business needs can shift really quickly. And so someone that can maintain and recognize that balance, all while also having sort of a heightened EQ, where one can really empathize with each customer that they're connecting with. I always look at that empathy piece of the puzzle and being able to recognize customers as humans and talk to customers as humans, as the piece that's so challenging to teach or coach, and it's something that's really innate, that I find in really high performers within the customer experience world, and to kind of have the balance of all of that is something that is sometimes unicorn-like to find in a candidate, but it really leads to really great success. When I hire, within the hiring process, I typically send out a writing sample prompt at the very beginning of the process to kind of get a sense for a candidate's resolution pathing, the level of balance between customer and business that they might display, as well as the tone and the level of empathy, and the ability to connect in a personalized way as well. I've always coached when someone comes on board and is on the team. I think another piece of the puzzle is, having an advocate or an agent where difficult conversations with customers aren't necessarily taken personally. And one thing that I've always tended to coach around is that, challenging conversations with customers, for them to really understand that the customer, of course, isn't upset at them, at the individual personally, but at whatever situation might be occurring. And I've definitely had to have, coaching conversations with advocates, around like finding the real root issue of a customer's potential frustration, and how, they can really put themselves in the customer's shoes and empathize and understand, and turn that conversation around. And with that, I think coaching as a whole, once an employee comes on, and developing them, that ongoing, consistent communication is really important to developing employees, I think, not just in customer experience, but just holistically as a whole. For me, I always make sure to hold regular weekly one-on-ones with my direct reports. And now that I have that multi-layered, multi-tiered team, that expectation definitely trickles down to supervisors meeting with their advocates one-on-one weekly. A year ago, before supervisors came on board, and when all of the advocates reported to me, it led to me having about 15 weekly one-on-ones at that time, which, of course, it was a huge chunk of time and a huge part of my week. But I always really held it and continue to hold it as the most important part of my week. That consistent communication around coaching and touching base and seeing how, each of your people are feeling and doing, and talking through any challenges or any wins is so incredibly important as far as developing employees as a whole.
Yeah, and I love that advocate concept, but I do want to take a moment to dive deeper into sort of how you're defining that. And then more importantly, when you think of the idea of advocate, that obviously means that to some degree, the employees or representatives, they're going to be answering to customers. And yet, we know at the end of the day, it's their bosses who are signing the checks, right? They're the ones who are evaluating whether they advance in the company, whether they stay on board, what happens with their careers. And so how, from a supervisor perspective or from a leadership perspective, do you kind of really send the message that, hey, yes, we're maybe the people signing your checks, but it's still the customer to whom you're really reporting and ultimately trying to satisfy?
Yeah, I think, and especially when thinking about it in the framework of that advocate term, to me, it's really about each individual on the team really standing up for bettering the end-to-end customer experience, based on what they are hearing firsthand. One way that we have started to roll out and have it where each customer advocate really has, a stake in bettering that experience, and helping me lead the charge towards a real customer-centric environment at Purple Carrot. We rolled out recently what we call SMEs, or rather subject matter experts, for each customer advocate on the team. And for the most part, these subject matters, they are collaborative across the business, cross-functionally with other departments. And it is a very important part of the week for each customer advocate that some of their bandwidth is spent, finding, based on customers that are contacting us, that we are reaching out to, the feedback that they give, that they're putting together reports and documentation with this customer feedback and delivering it on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to key stakeholders across the business. So, for example, we have a subject matter expert that collaborates with the product and user experience and tech teams. And they keep a shared document of every single bug or glitch or area of customer confusion that a customer, connects with our team with. And bi-weekly, she meets with the head of product and goes through each and every line item on that report to connect on what its fix is, when the fix will be pushed through, what can be done in the meantime, depending on, road mapping and tech bandwidth and such. And so it's really starting by having these cross-functional subject matter experts, as well as myself at a high level, collaborating cross-functionally, it's really leading to this real advocacy for the customer experience and for the customer, and really starting to pivot and shift the perception and view of the customer's experience as really being a top priority, which is a really exciting time and place to be in customer experience at an organization that's really going through this, this shift in recognizing and learning and using customer feedback in really the best possible way.
And as I alluded to in my introduction, I think there's some real advantages to being a startup organization in that whereas a lot of established organizations, they're trying to figure out how to be customer-centric because they've spent the last few decades kind of looking at the customer experience as a pure cost and just something you have to deal with and not really a source of value for the organization. Startups don't have to start that way. They can be customer-centric from the very beginning, and that's going to allow them to really focus on how their brand can always create the most valuable experiences for customers. That said, there are some unique challenges, and one of those challenges is that there's uncertainty, right? I mean, no matter how good you're planning, no matter how great the vision, there's no way to entirely know which product lines are going to hit quite as well as the others, and there's no way to know how your business will kind of change in those early stages. So given that no organization that's starting up has figured everything out, how does that uncertainty maybe impact the way you think about training or setting metrics or hiring decisions? I mean, all these things are so crucial to a great customer experience.
100%. I think for being at a startup where there is that level of uncertainty just overall with, direction with your brand vision, direction with your product vision, and initiatives that might change really quickly. For me, it's that flexibility, the level of flexibility that one has as a manager or leader is so key. I cannot stress it enough how important, having a level of flexibility is, because you're absolutely right. Any startup really haven't necessarily figured every single thing out yet. And things shift really, really quickly, and being able to pivot from one direction to another and in a leadership role, without feeling like, Chicken Little where the sky is falling is really important. I have within my career, not just at Purple Carrot, but at other organizations I've been a part of, I've definitely learned throughout the years how anytime a manager or leader, and I am definitely guilty of it in my younger years, where if there's any sort of like panic or worry about a change that starts to stem from an organizational hypergrowth, that worry, that feeling trickles down to your people almost immediately. And you can literally feel the shift in the air when this happens. And so that level of flexibility is just so important to kind of stay calm and cool as a cucumber. And there are definitely days that are challenging where then, you get into your car and the windows are rolled up and you want to scream, and like that is fine. But, definitely being flexible and maintaining a really like calm demeanor to your people is really important. I think when it comes to hiring decisions, especially headcount, it is where some of the quantitative approaches to do so come into play, even with potential shifting priorities or changes that happen. For me, I look at and I make sure to stay, on the pulse of order projection changes that might be happening volume-wise with any changes that are coming up, and tying, average contact volume per advocate against that order volume, and, projecting out our contact to order ratio, kind of using some of that formula to see where our contact volume might be landing, and knowing that if we need more people, hiring always takes time. So I try to stay ahead of it as much as possible, because for me, I'm a firm believer that taking the time to find the right person and people always trumps finding just any person. Taking the time to find the right people for your team is so important. And then I think also kind of managing and leading a customer experience team and a support team through changes and through some of the shifts that can happen at a startup. I think ongoing training is so important. For us at Purple Carrot, training definitely does not end at the end of, a new hires, a new advocate's onboarding. We really make sure to have a handful of training sessions, either by myself or by supervisors on the team, at team meetings. Every quarter, we try to have a handful of them that are tied to department objectives. So when we start thinking about immediate customer support and that immediacy piece, we had a training this past quarter around live chat best practices, and then also thinking about focusing on different segments of customers, having a training session specifically around, high value long-term customers, and having sort of like concierge style support tips and tricks. And so those trainings are constantly evolving and growing, and constantly being rolled out. And so I think that ongoing training around that, have it occur around some of the shifts within the business, is also super important for a customer experience team.
And you did reference really being able to commit to that kind of methodical approach and also having a lot of precision when you think about your hiring and your strategy. But I'd imagine that gets trickier as if you are successful in growing, right? As you start to grow very rapidly and need to scale your operation very rapidly, there is going to be that challenge of how do you maintain that same commitment to a personal experience? How do you maintain that same degree of precise hiring and really thorough coaching as you start to scale the operation? So what are some recommendations you have for that challenge of really dealing with rapid growth that every startup is so aggressively seeking?
Yeah, I think especially when thinking about the people management and the people leadership side of staying committed to the advocate or the agent experience, I am a really strong believer that the customer experience is a reflection of the employee experience. And if there's friction within the employee experience, it's definitely going to resonate to the customer experience really quickly. It's, that like support saying that like happy people, take care of, happy people sort of thing. And so during times of rapid growth, for me personally, I find that putting your people first, just like how I hope for my organization as a whole to put customers first is so important. And to not, even in those chaotic moments of rapid growth, not losing sight of putting your people first. Additionally, I think as a leader, being able to take a step back and think big picture, and communicate the big picture to your team about the rapid growth and the potential chaos and what is happening is really important, especially within customer experience and the customer support piece of customer experience. Each single contact is such a granular piece of the puzzle that it can be without a manager or a leader, to communicate some of the bigger picture pieces of what's going on. It can be really challenging for advocates to zoom out. And so being a leader or having a leader that's able to communicate that definitely creates a level of transparency around the rapid growth that really helps the agent experience overall. And then again, going back to that sort of like Chicken Little analogy, really being flexible, being calm and cool under pressure, and through those times of growth. Also, I think having that at the forefront of one's mind during times of rapid growth is really important to stay committed to the overall agent experience as well.
And then I want to wrap up by talking about the inevitable when you want to think about operations, and that is the idea of metrics. Now, certainly, everyone, when they talk about creating great customer experience, they point toward human factors and the idea of connecting with customers and even making agents have a great experience as well, as you referenced. But then when it comes time to actually measure performance and set those metrics or build those scorecards, there's a lot of hesitance to figure out how exactly do we quantify some of these human factors. They may sound good in theory, but if I'm running a business, I got to look at hard numbers. And so what's your take? What are some things that you're measuring, and maybe what are some recommendations for incorporating humanity into some of your quantitative scoring?
Yeah, I think that part of when determining KPIs, both for individual performers as well as an overall customer experience department, I think some of the human approach is not necessarily subscribing to the thought that there's one single magic metric that is going to tell the full story of an organization's customer experience. Some of like the human side of metrics, which sounds a little not hypocritical, but kind of like an oxymoron. But I think recognizing that different metrics tell a different story, and to look at many of them, it creates a more humanized view of metrics. And so for an individual's performance, like a customer advocate or an agent, from day one at Purple Carrot, I set KPIs and benchmarks around them to be a balance metric-wise of quality within customer satisfaction, quantity as far as volume output, and then also overarching business needs. And one is not necessarily more important than the other. It really is an equal blend of the three to show an overall view of an individual's performance. And when I mention overarching business needs, those, of course, especially in a startup, a growing startup world, those can shift as well. And so whether it's focused on immediacy, where we look at some of the first response or the response timing, or whether it be credits and refunds to focus on the fact that really great service doesn't necessarily mean giving a ton of money as a Band-Aid fix that isn't really fixing the root issue. Looking at the whole picture of an agent's performance within those metrics kind of balanced as a whole. Also, from the human side of it, while those quantitative metrics are measured weekly and are touched base on every week at one-on-ones, also at one-on-ones there is an equal level of importance based on the qualitative feedback that a customer gives within those customer satisfaction scores. I very quickly, once I started at Purple Carrot, shifted our CSAT to be measured on a platform that is a bit more humanized and a bit more personalized, both within the customer view as well as the agent's view, where the qualitative feedback is really central to the CSAT experience and not just the numeric score. And so focusing on some of that as well has really brought the human side to those KPIs. And I look at metrics and KPIs for customer experience holistically in the same lens. I look at on a quarterly basis a customer effort score, a customer expectation score, net promoter scores, but just as important as the actual metric number, the open text field qualitative feedback that we get, that it's that feedback that really is what helps drive positive change for the customer experience, is just as important, if not more so, than the actual hard numbers within the KPIs as well.
Absolutely great advice there. And Meredith, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing so many great insights, really getting into the mechanics of how you set the customer experience vision and then everything that goes into carrying it out, because that combination of thinking about the customer, thinking about the role the employees play in delivering a great customer experience, and then actually putting the mechanism in place to do it is so important and so rarely achieved in such a comprehensive way. So I'm glad that you kind of have a great grip on things, and I'm thrilled to see how Purple Carrot evolves over the next several years.
Thank you. I am equally as excited as well.
Definitely. And we're thrilled to have you coming to Austin as well. I think it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for you to share some additional insights. And for those who are either starting out in the customer experience space or legacy brands who are really trying to stay current and stay in touch with their customers, I feel like there's going to be a lot that they can share and learn from you at the event.
I'm so excited for Austin in September and to be a part of it. So looking forward to it.
Great. We're excited to have you. Thanks so much for today's discussion. And for CCW Digital, this has been Brian Cantor.